Snow fell over Boston that March night, thick, heavy, and silent. But beneath the calm, the city seethed. Boston was a powder keg. Angry, humiliated, and broke, British soldiers lined its streets, symbols of an empire that taxed and scolded, watched and waited. At the Custom House on King Street, a single sentry, Private Hugh White, stood guard, pacing before the emblem of British authority. Then came Edward Garrick, a young apprentice, bold with ale and frustration. He mocked the British officer over an unpaid bill. White snapped and struck Garrett across the face with the butt of his musket. Word spread through the winter air like wildfire. By the time White called for help, hundreds had gathered, shouting, jeering, pelting snowballs packed with ice, rocks, and oyster shells. Captain Thomas Preston arrived with 7 men to reinforce the post, but there was no order to restore, only noise, only anger. Then a blow landed, a soldier stumbled, and a single musket fired. That shot broke the silence of the Empire. A volley followed, smoke filled the air, and when it cleared, 5 colonists lay in the snow. Samuel Gray, Samuel Maverick, Patrick Carr, James Caldwell, and Crispus Attucks, a sailor of African and native descent. Their blood mingled with the snow on King Street, and the world would remember that night as the Boston Massacre. To the Patriots, it was a slaughter, cold and deliberate. To the Loyalists, a tragedy, soldiers trapped and terrified. But either way, something irreversible had happened.
Welcome to Unlocking the Secrets of America's Founding Ideas. Discover the untold stories of American history with the National Character Association.
Two years before the massacre on October 1st, 1768, Boston watched as British ships filled its harbor. Regiments of redcoats marched ashore, drums beating, muskets gleaming, to keep the peace. But the colonists knew better. The soldiers were there to enforce the Townshend Acts, taxes imposed without consent. To Bostonians, especially the radicals of the Sons of Liberty, this was an occupation. The streets filled with resentment. Soldiers seen as invaders faced daily insults and taunts. Skirmishes broke out between off-duty troops and dock workers. Tavern brawls turned into riots. And then, in February of 1770, a child's death lit the fuse. Christopher Sider, just 11 years old, was shot and killed by a loyalist during a protest. His funeral drew thousands, a procession of grief and fury through narrow Boston streets. 11 days later, the city would erupt again. It began with a shout. The crowd swelled, 300, maybe 400 strong. Someone threw a club. Someone screamed, "Fire if you dare!" Private Montgomery was struck and fell to the ground. His musket discharged. That single shot unleashed chaos. Other soldiers fired into the crowd. The reports echoed through King Street, smoke rolling between the brick facades, shouts turning to screams. When the smoke lifted, 5 lay dead or dying. Governor Thomas Hutchinson arrived trying to calm the mob. He promised justice, and for the moment, Boston stood still, suspended between rage and shock. By dawn, Captain Thomas Preston and 8 soldiers were under arrest for murder. The massacre sent tremors through every colony. Pamphlets flew, rumors burned. Few dared to defend the British soldiers. except two men who believed that law must stand above passion. John Adams and Josiah Quincy, both patriots, both risking their reputations. Adams argued that justice was not vengeance, and even the guilty deserve reason over rage. He told the jury, "Facts are stubborn things." After weeks of testimony, 6 soldiers were acquitted. 2 were convicted of manslaughter and branded with the letter M, a mark of shame that would never fade. For Adams, the cost was personal, but his defense, fair, principled, and unpopular, would later become proof of the integrity upon which a new nation might stand. Governor Hutchinson removed British troops from Boston to restore order, but the city had already changed. Each March, Bostonians gathered to remember the event, not as tragedy, but as warning. From pulpits and podiums came the message: when power fires on its people, tyranny has already begun. The Boston Massacre lasted mere seconds, but its echo would last generations. From the snow on King Street to the fields of Lexington and Concord, from musket smoke to the Declaration's ink, this was the moment when pleading turned to defiance. The snow of Boston was stained red, and the revolution had begun.
Like, follow, and subscribe to the National Character Association. Visit nationalcharacter.org to learn more.